We were on top of a hill. The manner in which I was captured was the Germans made an attack. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon. They started the attack, and we were in foxholes, staggered foxholes, and they added the forward foxholes. They start coming forward, throwing the hand grenades in the foxholes. My foxhole, there were two of us in my foxhole. We used up all of our ammunition. We only had about 11 rounds between us, and we jumped out of the foxhole because we didn't want the hand grenades thrown in on top of us. And this one German seemed to have coming at me with his bayonet. He had his long 12-inch bayonet, and he was running, and he's yelling at me, "Raus mit der Hand," and "Get your hands up." I was frozen with fear. I couldn't get my hands up. I do remember to this day looking at that bayonet, and I could see that the end of the bayonet was rusty, or had rust on it or dirt.
Yes.
And I said to myself, "My God, he's going to stick me with a dirty bayonet." At that, it's something that sticks in your mind.
Yeah.
He came up to me, put the bayonet, jabbed it at me, and hit the button on my field jacket. It slid off and sliced my field jacket. And then he pulled it back and he yelled again, "Raus mit der Hand." And by that time I was able to get my hands up in the air. He turned me around, gave me a kick in the back, and he shoved me down the hill. As I was going down the hill, another GI was going down. We grabbed each other, and that was Sergeant, oh my God, I forgot his name. Sergeant from the Crosswest guy. And he and I became the best friends, and we stayed in prison all together. Al Harnick. He has since died, but we grabbed each other for support, and we made our way down the hill. That's how I was captured. Down at the bottom of the hill, they gathered us in groups, and then they started marching us towards Prum, and we slept in the fields, in the muddy fields, Countdown, because the roads were all filled with tanks and German vehicles. And it was at that time that despair set in, because we were under the impression we were fighting a defeated army. And as we were going back and we saw all this brand new equipment and these huge Tiger tanks that are sizes of houses, I mean, the despair set in that we knew that this was not just a local operation. We were, up until that point, we had no idea of the size of the battle, how many troops were involved. It was only much later that I found out that our regiment, or our division of 15,000 men, had been hit by 3 German armies of over 200,000 men. And that's how they overran us so fast.
And how did it feel losing your friends?
At the time, you were numb.
Right, but
you were numb.
But once you were in the prison camps, or I mean, when you had time to think about everything that happened.
When you got into prison camp and you that's when you start wondering. But the most prominent thing that came to your mind was not so much as for me, was not losing my friends or anything, was did my family know what happened to me? Did they know I was alive, or did they think I was dead? That worried me no end, all through the time until I was released, almost 6 months later.
Okay.
But there are times when you when you had a moment for yourself, when you started to speculate on, did he make it or did he not make it? Some you saw in the prisons, and before they start separating us out and putting us on the trains and start shipping us out all over Germany.
And what, were you a private, or were you a sergeant, or what?
I was a corporal, and then when we had split off, the top kick had made me a sergeant in charge of the squad when we went back into the rear guard action. And it was never officially a sergeant, but I told the Germans I was a sergeant, so that they sent me to an NCO camp instead of to a private camp.
Oh, okay. And how I don't know how it went before, but before the war, how did they give you the corporal standing?
During high school, I took what we call Reserve Officers Training, ROTC, and I was in it for 4 years. I learned military tactics, military practice, and everything else. I had risen there, so when I went into the service, I had a much further advanced knowledge, plus the fact that having been in the airborne, I was in the airborne for 7 months and had made 2 parachute jumps. I had more advanced training than the normal infantryman had.
Okay. And I know you were a prisoner, but how do you think, the 106th, or how did you help the 106th in the Battle of the Bulge? How do you think it impacted the win on the Germans?
Well,
the 106th, even though they got pretty much ran over, how do you think it?
I feel that having read the German plans after the war, that the Germans had planned to be in St. Vith the first day of the attack, and they were depending on speed all the way, blitzkrieg.
Yes.
But our having held them up for 3 days, denied them the crossroads that they needed for their tanks, so that the main body couldn't advance as fast as they had hoped.
Okay.
Gave the reserves, they gave the time for the 82nd Airborne to develop a northern ridge up in the Eisenborn Ridge. It gave the 101st Parachute Division, which was in reserve, time to get into Bastogne. It gave Patton time to bring his troops from an attack and start pushing them north. Those 3 days gave them that kind of time to reorganize and to reassess the battlefront. And so therefore our sacrifice of being sacrificed, so to speak, and it being expendable, I think helped in the long run to defeat the Germans in the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.